No, I
One up. Very good. Amazing. Okay. So last night, I spoke about the difference between Moses' leadership and Korach's leadership, Labriud, which we read about more this morning. Korach's style was actually, while a leader, very self-serving, and preyed upon the hurts, fears, vulnerability, and powerlessness, and lack of awareness of people. It was a leadership style that was manipulative. Leadership was about Korach. He leads to get, whether it is power, status, access, whatever. Moses' leadership differs vastly. He leads not to get something, but to give. His is not self-serving, but other-serving, and the serving of all others. Whereas Korach competes to win, and that's the goal, vision and tactic wrapped into one. Nothing else seems to matter to Korach. Moses, on the other hand, understands himself to be the vessel through which God's vision for the Israelites in the world could become manifest. So he works to make that happen because he believes everyone matters. I also suggested last night that we internally sometimes have an inner Korach and we sometimes have an inner Moshe that sometimes compels and leads us and directs us. And that we have to actually listen closely, because while it sounded like the difference between the two was was miles apart, and in fact, they actually can overlap. And that we have to be very humble and very self-reflective to understand which voice or voices are speaking to us and guiding us as we move forward in the world. It's easy to point out the Korach in somebody else. It's very difficult to want to locate it in ourselves. So today's Haftorah helps us to approach these ideas further, and we're going to look at them on the handout now. If you take a look at page 878, verses 6 through 11, beginning at the top where it says people, is there actually someone who would like to read that, verses 6 through 11? It works for me. Jason Bavakasha. Oh, that's great. I love that. Here at home. Yeah.
Samuel said to the people, "The Lord is witness, he who appointed Moses and Aaron and who brought your fathers out of the land of Egypt. Come, stand before the Lord while I cite against you all the kindnesses that the Lord has done to you and your fathers. When Jacob came to Egypt, your fathers heard, and the Lord sent Moses and Aaron, who brought your fathers out of Egypt and settled them in this place. But they forgot the Lord their God, so he delivered them into the hands of Sisera, the military commander of Hasor, into the hands of the Philistines, and into the hands of the king of Moab. And these made war upon them. For we have forsaken the Lord and worshipped the Baalim and Ashtaroth. O deliver us from our enemies, and we will serve you. And the Lord sent Jerubbaal and Bedan and Jephthah and Samuel, and delivered you from the enemies around you, and you dwelt in security."
Great, thank you. So the prophet Samuel is recounting a little piece of history, but of course it's very selective, right? As all recounting is. Who gets to tell history? And be careful in analyzing what they choose to tell and what they choose to omit, right? He mentions by name here 5 leaders. He mentions in verse 8 Moses and Aaron, who brought you out of Egypt and brought your ancestors out of Egypt and settled them here in Eretz Israel. Samuel is around seemingly about 150 years 125 years after Moses, depending on when you date the Exodus, etc. So it's not ancient history to him like it sounds like for us. In addition to Moses and Aaron, he has mentioned judges Bedan, Yerubbaal Bedan, who are minor judges, as well as the judge Yiftach, who's also a minor judge. Yerubbaal, you might know better as Gideon. Bedan, there's almost nothing about him even written. He's just sort of mentioned in the book of Judges as a judge, but you don't actually have a really account. Gideon seems to be a gifted military leader, but even important thing, Yiftach at the end seems to be what is a leader who is a savvy military commander, but a person who had questionable judgment that had ended up with tragic consequences. So because the list doesn't include all the history in those 125 years, or even all the major points, it doesn't mention, for example, Joshua's leadership. That was certainly critical and important. That transition from desert to the land. Doesn't mention Deborah, for example, clearly important judge. There's Othniel, a great figure in the Hebron area, not mentioned at all. So clearly, this is not listed merely to cover history. So, in looking at the names, Moses, Aaron, Bedan, and Yiftach, do you see any purpose in those names? Yes.
So I think it actually kind of links to what he says next couple verses, where he's chastising them for demanding a king. He's sort of generally like, so you have a couple really good leaders, and then you've got mostly human leaders. And he's including himself in this. And it's like, and now you want a king, but you have God. And I feel like it's right, like put your faith in mortal kings. And so what he's doing is he's just showing them that they're really making the wrong decision. Like you're going from a system of at least they can change to a monarchy. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And it's really a great idea. It's like.
So Josh's suggestion, and I'm going to repeat it because sometimes with the camera being that way, they may not hear as well at home, suggested that it ties in with Samuel's trying to get the people not to want a monarch for a leader, not to want a king or queen. So by suggesting these names, he is doing that. That's a great theory. It's very plausible. The one problem with the theory is why mention one of the worst judges, Yiftach, right? Who led to the killing of his daughter and 2 military defeats. You might have thought that he would have only mentioned good leaders and included Joshua, Othniel, Deborah, and others to make the case that there's plenty of good leaders to be had. Let's just choose a good leader to succeed me. Yes.
I guess that was kind of my point. Is he's pointing out that with the judge system, you get some good leaders, you get some bad leaders. Mm-hmm. But the bad leaders in the mix. If you move to a king system, get a bad leader, you're stuck. Like there's no recovering from that easily.
Another great point. So again, you might imagine if that was his major point, rather than only including one bad judge, leaders, he might have included 4 bad leaders and 1 good one, right? Like it's really hard to, like I love that you're coming up with theories, but I don't disagree with your point at all. But I'm just saying, like, it's really hard to understand for sure that that's his point or his only point, because he doesn't necessarily, because he's doing it on the spot, he doesn't seem to do it the most convincing way that he could have, right? He could have upped his rhetorical game, right? Anybody else have a theory about the use of these particular 5 names? It's okay if you don't, because I don't think I do. Yes. Ah, Jordan, great point. He's maybe pointing out that different human beings have different aspects to them. And each of these people, including Moses, have a downside as well as an upside, right? Even the bad judge had very good qualities and did some good things as well. And even Moses, who was, the closest to a perfect leader, if you will, also did some things for which, he regretted and that were not really great, right? All human beings have that potential downside to actions that they might regret. That's all human. So thank you for pointing out that might be a possibility as well. And in which case we'd have to take the time to figure out what all the good traits, bad traits, because if he's done carefully, he's trying to aim at what kind of qualities can you find all these qualities one person. Right. And your point is actually very good because the judges were never national. The judges were actually regional figures. Sometimes it's actually not actually understood, but they all were only judges, which were really sort of military and charismatic leaders very, very locally, right? The Hebron area, that area. So interesting, both of your points. Anybody else have Jason,
even though we had these leaders that may not have been good, security, God told the Lord that. And so God gave you these leaders, they may not have been great, but you still dwell in security. And now you're afraid again, and you're my king.
Yeah, that's really a fantastic point. Well, because they dwell in security. And why did they dwell in security? What gave them the security? What? God. Well, God, but why did sometimes God gives you security and sometimes God in life give us some blows, right? So when did they get rewarded and when did they get sort of the blow? Thank you. Right? Their safety and security actually doesn't depend on any one leader. A lot of times our safety and security depend on the actions we take and the way that we live. And to put up all of the quality and richness of life for ourselves and to put it on a king, queen, president, or whatever is actually disempowering us from being the best people we can be and do the most out of life. It is to sit in a corner and do a woe is me and throw a pity party, table for one, with just because the leader is not necessarily a person we think is the best leader. So I love that you said that. That's really great. Anyone else over there? I love it. Right, so we're going to move to the next step. By the way, why does he include himself in this list? Anybody have a thought on that? Okay. So he might include himself because maybe he's failed, right? In fact, he senses that even the desire for a different form of government is an act of maybe faithlessness against God, perhaps, or a lack of trust in the system and in the power of the community that they've created with this federated system. Yes?
So I agree completely with that, but to add maybe another dimension.
Sure.
It could just simply be a rhetorical device or a rhetorical necessity. He's standing there. The people are going to include him in the list, whether he likes it or not. He might as well include himself and get in front of him.
Great. I love that. I find it interesting that he includes himself in the list right after one of the worst judges. I don't know if that's meant to evoke a comparison with a better, right? And so that maybe he was better than Yiftach. So yeah, there was a Yiftach, but look at, I may not have been a Moses, but I'm certainly better than a Yiftach, right? So maybe things are on the upswing. Oh, Jordan, I see something roiling around in there.
Yeah, so perhaps he senses that people want. So he listens to others say, okay, you want change? Here's I am the God. The enemies of the system. Want something different. We might get something different. We might not like it. there is. This is the cutoff.
Hmm.
Before, including myself,
Ah,
part of the old system. If you get a new one and you don't like it, just remember you've had all of this.
I love that. That's very powerful, right? If we take this step, there's no turning back. Everything that came before will have been something that is going to be in many ways very different, because the culture of having communities that have local leaders, but there's some sort of confederation of all of us being unified and having multiple leadership is different than having leadership in one single person. It's going to be a very, very different. I love that. It's really thoughtful. Anybody else have a thought? So, let's move to the next piece. And just, we're actually going to move on. There were 6 leaders mentioned in the passage. 3, Moses, Aaron, and Samuel, were considered major leaders. The other 3, Yerubal, Dan, were considered minor leaders in terms of the amount of people that they affected and sort of were leaders of, and in terms of their achievements. The Talmud says this was done to show that all leaders, exceptional or not, are to be respected and followed. That is what the Talmud says. That you shouldn't just, say we should only respect the Abraham Lincolns and not the Calvin religious, right? Only I really don't know that he wasn't respected, but I'm just saying that for some of us, we remember certain leaders we think of as being really giants. And then when somebody's not a giant, we feel like maybe they shouldn't be as respected as much. So the Talmud's dictum is to try to suggest that all leaders should have a degree of respect. Why? Do you agree with that? Oh, what? We've got some feisty little reactions. Okay. Phil, I think you were the first feisty reaction. Why do you disagree?
A lot of leaders around the world,
Mm-hmm.
not just in America,
Mm-hmm.
but a lot of leaders should never have become, don't know how to lead into the people.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
They're in it for themselves.
So Phil suggests that some people should never become leaders because they really don't know how to lead, number one, and number 2, they're in it for themselves. Thank you. Josh?
My example isn't even that they're in it for themselves. They don't know how to lead, but Pat Buchanan was a terrible president. He's inaction and he directly led that caused the civil war. Setbacks, the abolition of slavery fight. So, why should we respect?
I thought Pat Buchanan was a commentator on TV who ran for president and lost.
No,
My thinking,
I might be using the wrong.
is it John?
I think it might be John. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, just wanted to make sure.
My mistake.
But point well taken. That some presidents led us into. So maybe so you're saying that Phil and Josh are saying that because they're either unworthy, don't know how to lead, or in it for themselves, or do things that cause terrific harm, we should not respect them. Yeah.
value that I think you have not only agreed but a responsibility.
Beautiful.
You have to have.
So I love that. The suggestion was that when somebody comes into leadership, we should sort of give them the benefit of the doubt. Dam l'chaf zchut is what the Mishnah would say, that we should give them a chance to say, maybe they don't have a lot of background. Maybe they really know their skill set and presume they have less skill set, but give them a chance to be a leader. And we shouldn't disrespect them just because they aren't well known like a Moses or Aaron. However, the suggestion continued that if they show themselves to be a bad leader, tyrannical, selfish, running us in the wrong direction, then we have the right to rise up, have our voices heard, depose that leader, whether it is through the ballot box or impeachment or whatever the proper forms might be, because the leader needs to be leading people, and you can only do that if people are with you. So I love that. That's a great comment. Thank you so much. Let's take a moment. What actually makes a good leader? What is a quality that makes a leader, and what is a quality that makes a leader an exceptional leader? What's a quality? Yes. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I feel that whatever you are leading, whether it's just a group or if you have to lead on behalf of people, not on behalf of.
Great. So Phil says one quality is that to make sure that the person is actually leading on behalf of all the people, right? They have to have that kind of perspective. Yes, Josh.
But there's a set of qualities that you could say make a good leader. I don't think there's any one quality that makes it.
Okay.
Rather, there are leaders who usually are good leaders who have a quality that matches the situation to which they are called. And a leader with that quality in a different situation could be a bad leader. After all, a lot of the times when we say it's did they succeed? And sometimes that is this person with this quality succeeded because the opposing side was receptive or folded under that quality. But if it hadn't, things would have gone much less optimal. And so that's what I think makes it exceptional. It's not just do they have the qualities of an exceptional leader, it's do they have the right quality at the right time and the right place.
Thank you. So Josh's idea is that an exceptional leader is someone who is not only a good leader, but is the right person at the right point in time. And it's almost like a shark sight or some sort of mystical a component of fate or destiny for that person that they rise to an occasion that maybe they themselves did not know they could rise to, right? So there's something intangible and not a formula for that leader. Thank you. Anybody else want to speak? And then I'll go Phil again. Go back a shot.
An exceptional leader is someone who doesn't just speak, but goes beyond leadership and does more and allows others to be part of that leadership instead of it's just I'm doing it and empowering other people, not themselves, but brings in new ideas, new ways of doing things that are exceptional and that are acceptable to the mass.
That's you said an awful lot of great things, and I won't be able to repeat them all, but one of them was empowers all kinds of people, is open to new ideas and new ways of doing things, and when they are really matched to the moment, is able to translate them to convince the people that that's really a good thing, so that it's not him versus the people, but she or he or they, with the people, right? So thank you for that. That was actually very thoughtful. Yes, Bavakasha. I love it. That's simple but eloquent. Any kind of good leader has to be a good listener and an active listener, and that listening to the people, both hearing the voices of the people, but also trying to go into hearing what the kind of mood is and getting a good sense. It's the deeper listening than merely getting somebody in the room, right? Sometimes when you listen to somebody, you have to watch their body language, and there's all kinds of ways to listen more fully, robustly. It's actually a skill that has to be very developed. It's not just anybody, just a matter of hearing words, but you got to process and try to understand the emotion behind it and the sensibility. So thank you. It's a great idea. We probably need to get to Mustav. We're running, I don't know if we're running late or not, but I love this discussion today. Needless to say, can we just have a couple of 2-3 suggestions on who is someone, either Jewish or not Jewish, living or deceased or even fictional, someone you would hold up, at least right now in your head, as someone who was an exceptional leader. Phil? Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King, Zecher Tzadik Livracha, may his memory be for a blessing. Can you give me just a couple of adjectives of what stuck for you from his leadership? What about his leadership?
He didn't dictate, show the way in a non-violent way of equality. He was not a dictator.
Beautiful. So he was not a dictator. In fact, he formed coalitions. He brought in religious Christians, but then all kinds of other people into his movement, non-religious, Jewish, and others into the civil rights movement. So thank you for that. Josh, do you have something in mind?
Prime Minister Golda Meir.
Okay, Prime Minister Golda Meir. Sounds like you just went to Israel. Can you tell us a couple of things why Golda Meir?
She held the country together during a very trying time, and she managed to do it in a way where it still advanced goals of quality and Israel, while also defending against outside attacks.
Beautiful. So she Golda Meir ruled in very difficult times and helped get a whole country through it, and still tried to remain true to the goals of equality for all. Fantastic.
Lois has one.
Oh, Lois? Yes. Lois? Fantastic. So President Zelensky, we can be proud that he's Jewish or not. He's clearly an exceptional leader in what is also a very trying time for his people and his country. He has been inspiring the whole world. He's inspired a lot of people of Ukrainian background or not to go to Ukraine, help them out. Clearly, in the case of fighting off a despot, a tyrannical person who is trying to use whatever power that he has to invade and destroy it. So thank you for that suggestion. And you had a suggestion? She channeled you. It was actually your suggestion, and she somehow siphoned from your neshama. Fantastic. So thank you for all those suggestions. There's 3 very thoughtful ones. They're all sort of different, right? And President Zelensky is someone that you would have thought had no skill set, right? Because his background, he was a comedian. We normally don't think, well, that's the point me, I would be the best possible leader. You would normally think that's not a good idea. In fact, not everybody who is from showbiz ends up making a very good leader. So just because somebody had a TV show or made a movie does not mean they should be a leader. So in any event, react today in bringing it back to we have questions. How does the president help my life? But it seemed from our discussion that we all feel that leadership is not about focusing on a single constituent, nor is it about focusing on that person's own well-being. It also seems from our discussion today that leadership is tied to character. That is what I sort of heard, not that anybody used that word specifically, and that we heard about acting on concern for the welfare and benefit of the community as a whole. It may be, and that they listen to the welfare of the people and don't trample on any group of people's rights and well-being. It may be truly difficult for us sometimes to actually vote for the better candidate, or even to get the better candidate nominated, or even to get a good candidate to run. It's actually a difficult thing in the current political climate, quite frankly. And as I think Josh pointed out, to some degree, it is history and our collective memory of history that actually tend to elevate a good leader to the memory, to the status of an exceptional leader. Sometimes we don't always recognize that in their time, or at least at the very moment. And it is our history and memory that will relegate the mediocre to the history, and relegate the horrific and horrible and despotic to infamy. What remains from this discussion are concerns of equality, liberty, and justice, and hope for a better world. So as we think about our leaders today, whether they're leaders in the executive branch, judicial branch, or legislative branch, I'm wondering if when we think about that, what comes to mind are the good and exceptional leaders, or maybe the mediocre or the negative leaders. Because I think there are examples of both in each of those. You have another leader, Lois? You're way too kind, and we're not going there. So thank you. I appreciate it. Ani ma'arichot. Thank you. Thank you. You're very kind. So as we think about who those leaders are in place, we need to also be conscious of our own character. We need to be conscious of our character. And leaders don't just pop up. Leaders are produced and voted on, or appointed and voted on, or nominated and voted on. If you are concerned about the direction of our country, then it is up to you to be aware of what's going on and to make sure your voice is heard. And it's not just to be heard on high in a place where nothing will happen, but you need to be voicing among friends and peers to begin a movement that will get leadership that is more closely in the direction of righteousness and justice and equality and concern for rights. If not, you're not taking the power that you have and using it. You're all powerful people. You all are warm, caring, friendly people. Your hearts are in the right place. But we all need not to just sit down and whimper. We need to be doing what we need to be doing. And that might be going to rallies. That might make us feel good at the moment. I've been to many in my lifetime. And I'll continue to do so. But we need to do more than that, because the moment of that hour and a half at a rally may not have legs beyond it. And right now, there seem to be two Americas, and there seem to be two directions, backwards or forwards. And if we want to move forward with rights for women and rights for LGBTQ plus community and concern for other communities, American communities, then we need to not just think the thought or sign an online petition. We should sign online petitions, but not just sign an online petition. We need to do all the work that we can so that we can produce good leaders, and hopefully history will make them exceptional leaders. Thank you for a wonderful, thoughtful discussion. I'll be carrying